Hello. Thank you very much for choosing to spend an hour with us today. We're excited about this panel, How to Choose the Right AI Strategy for Your Business, which will highlight the need to think strategically given the explosive growth of artificial intelligence in the business world. I'm Eric Thrillkill, the chair of Project Healthcare at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. Been a former CIO in three different healthcare provider organizations. I also serve as a venture partner in two different digital health funds. I'm going to be your host for today. I'm live here in Nashville where it's absolutely a spectacular morning and hope all of you are enjoying this as well. Today, we stand at a critical juncture where AI technologies ranging from predictive analytics, NLP, natural language processing, computer vision, and generative AI are not just buzzwords, but pivotal tools in reshaping industries. According to McKinsey, businesses that effectively leverage these AI capabilities are setting new benchmarks in operational efficiency, customer experience, and innovation, further differentiating their products and services from competitive offerings. Before diving headfirst into AI, build, partner, or buy relationships, I think it's imperative for organizations to craft a comprehensive AI strategy. This involves assessing clear business goals, scrutinizing existing data, exploring avenues for data acquisition, assessing talent, both internal and external, and fostering a culture conducive to technological adoption. Our distinguished panel today brings a wealth of expertise from diverse sectors, and I'm excited to have all three here today. We have Provisions Group Chief Technology Officer Eric Hendrickson with us today, Andrew Dittmer, a global AI black belt at Microsoft, and Chase Spurlock, founder and CEO of Decode Health, a company at the forefront of healthcare analytics, specializing in biomarker discovery and clinical decision support. Each panelist offers a unique perspective on integrating AI into their operations and achieving competitive advantages. PwC recently published a great piece on the accelerated pace of AI innovation and the requirements to build a robust strategy that aligns with these organizational capabilities and market needs. Today, we'll explore those thoughts, considerations for building an AI strategy, and how to ensure your organization not only keeps pace with the rapid evolution of AI, but excels at harnessing its full potential. So join us in this engaging discussion. We do have a Q&A session scheduled for the last 10 minutes or so. So be sure to drop your questions in the Q&A box. All right. At first, what I'd like to do is bring up a poll to sort of get us going, and it's a relatively simple but can be complex poll question. Actually, is what do you consider to be the most important for developing an AI strategy for your business? So it's giving you a choices of four options, obviously various degrees of intersection and importance with all four. And we're living in worlds that are frankly we've never experienced before, with the acceleration of AI in different categories and companies thinking about how to really leverage these new tools and technologies. So I'm going to hold on for another second or so, and we'll sort of digest these results. Looks like we have a really good attendance, and thank all of you for participating in the poll. Business goals arrives at our number one spot at 45% of the group, a close second in terms of tools and existing data. And then talent, thinking about talent, both internal and external, to include data scientists, advanced analytics pros, etc. I'm happy to turn this section over to Eric Hendrickson of Provisions Group. Eric, welcome. How's your day?
Great, thank you, Mr. Thrillkill. Yeah, it's an amazing time to be in technology and in data, and of course AI, which is our topic today. I think part of what's fascinating about this time maybe more than ever before in history, is how many options there are, how many insertion points there are, how much excitement and therefore sometimes hype there is related to the power, the possibility of AI, and how often, unlike maybe any time in years past, AI is more accessible at a lower cost point and a lower complexity point than it's ever been. But as we all know, with a plethora of options comes inherently the need to make sense of them all, a need to contextualize your need to what's out there, and then some help, some thoughts, some organization around choosing the best option. And so, one of the things we're passionate about today, and why we're very excited to bring you this talk today, is we feel like we've put together a framework that allows organizations who, like the slide you're looking at right now, have some cognitive dissonance. They say, they feel, they intuit that they actually have an AI strategy, or that they have an approach to AI that doesn't leave them sort of behind, and yet only 50%. So the vast majority say they have some progress made in AI, but they are doing that scarily only about 50% without a strategy. And so one of the things we're going to do today, or largely I think where we want to leave you today, is with some tools so that if you feel like you have a strategy, you can run through our 4-step process today as a bit of a checklist to say, does my strategy include all 4 of these thoughtful sort of components? Now, certainly, you may also be an organization, you may also be a leader who's been asked to come up with an AI strategy. And because of what I said a second ago, the plethora of options, the overwhelming sense of possibility, but also choices, leaves you arrested. You don't really have an AI strategy because you don't really know where to start. And so, if you're in that boat, then we hope to provide a grounding, an anchoring, an approach that will allow you to kind of move, I'll call it, from left to right. Now, to the extent that you might be past that point, you may want to use this framework today as a little less prescriptive, a little less stepwise, a little less organized in a sequence, and more just as a framework, as a set of checklists. And so to really quickly frame the approach today, or the talk today, I just want to talk about our 4 steps. One is the very first step, well aligned to the poll. I'm encouraged actually by the poll results, right? Because frequently in IT, how many leaders in this in this webinar have been asked to come up with something? It could be AI, but it could be anything. And hey, we should be doing something in AI. Well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What is the business goals associated? I mean, you genuinely a lot of have excitement about AI, but why? What are you actually trying to do? So what are your outcomes? Picking your outcomes is, as was reflected by the poll, we would agree, a very important aspect of really any technology or data investment, but certainly AI, given all the many options, all the many value points, is important. Number 2, once you have anchored yourself to at least an initial set of business outcomes, understanding, do you have the data? Is the data at a sufficient quality? Are you able to leverage that data at a cost and a readiness that allows you to immediately execute on those business outcomes? So that's number 2. Number 3 would be a quick orientation to the fact that AI is lots of different things, right? Our most recent excitement is around generative AI. But prior to that, let's say prior to 2017, 2018, it was predictive analytics. Prior to 2005, 2002, 2003, it was descriptive analytics. And how do we consolidate all data down into a single data source? And of course, for the 15 years prior to that, it was data warehousing and enterprise discovery of data and canonical data models. And so there's this spectrum of value. Where do you want AI to serve you, or what particular type of AI solution do you need? Is it generative? Is it predictive? Is it descriptive? Is it some combination of those things? And then lastly, what is your architecture, right? So one of the ways that the market currently has consumers, if you're in this boat, you certainly will recognize what I mean, Confused is everybody. I mean, there are AI features in almost every product. My favorite example is the popular PDF reader, right, has AI assistant in the top right corner. But every tool today has an AI component. Um, at the same time, there are many platforms out there that allow developers and business analysts to engage in AI solutions without requiring data science. And then lastly, of course, the traditional entry point, the historical entry point into solving an AI problem has been, I need to hire data scientists. I need to hire ML engineers. I need to hire NLP or computer vision experts. And so relative to what solution I need, what is my correct insertion point? And so that's the four step framework. Pick your outcomes, business outcomes aligned. What are your data sources and what is the quality and readiness of those data sources? Thirdly, pick your solution, generative, predictive, or otherwise. And then lastly, what is your correct insertion point? AI is feature, AI is platform, or AI is science.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks for that, Eric. And this graphic will serve as a grounding point for our panelists today. And right now we're going to dive into each particular step. So I'm going to start with step one. Pick your AI outcomes. Themes of automation versus insights versus generation of AI. And I'm going to start off with Chase Spurlock. So Chase, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Decode Health, and how you thought about AI capabilities necessary for this challenge of biomarker discovery and clinical decision support.
Well, thank you, Eric. Very glad to be with the group today and appreciate Provisions Group inviting me to be on the panel. So I'm Chase Spurlock. I'm a serial entrepreneur based here in Nashville. I'm actually a native of the area. I trained at Vanderbilt as an immunologist and computational biologist, have served on the faculty at Vanderbilt and NYU, and have been very fortunate to be a part of this Nashville healthcare ecosystem where I've built now two companies over the last 10 plus years that leverage advanced data approaches to bring new products and services to life. I always knew that I wanted a career in medicine and healthcare, but I never would have imagined that data science and artificial intelligence would be front and center in my life. But as we look at some of the greatest challenges in healthcare, how do we get ahead of a hospitalization or find and treat a disease early or devise new treatments? The use of these tools provides us with an opportunity to help patients like none other and deliver new innovations and treatments with greater speed and efficiency than the trial and error process that we typically see play out. And at Decode, we work closely with pharmaceutical, diagnostic, and other tech companies, and we're leveraging our data platform to devise new ways to detect, monitor, and treat disease. We're solving a lot of problems across a wide range of conditions, from autoimmune disease to cancer to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. We've got a great deal of experience working with multi-omic data, genomics and proteomics, clinical information like EHR records, insurance claims, and even social determinants of health. And we're using this information to deliver on two distinct programs. The first that you mentioned, biomarker discovery. This is where we're finding new molecular or protein targets to detect and treat disease, and clinical decision support, where we're using multiple layers of population level data across thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of patients to detect, monitor, and risk stratify patients. And that information can also be used to identify the right patients for clinical trials or understand why clinical trials fail. And over time, you come to realize that understanding and managing these conditions is not as simple as monitoring a single gene or clinical factor. Rather, it's how multiple genes, many different clinical factors come together and interact to produce a good or bad outcome. And to understand this complexity and accurately predict health outcomes, we've gone beyond what many groups might try to accomplish in Microsoft Excel. The use of machine learning and other AI approaches allows us to examine these complex interactions that exist in disease. But what we also realize is that not every data solution needs to reach for the AI hammer. It's an important tool, but there's a level of maturity required in approaching data problems that doesn't always exist in teams. And the advice I frequently give is that you shouldn't rush out tomorrow to use machine learning or even generative AI just because you can. Focus on the basics first. Establish a consistent data warehouse. Ensure that your organization is connected to and producing quality information that's relative to that business use case that we just saw on the poll, and then perform simple studies to descriptively understand the problem at hand. Every project we engage in, it's going to start with a descriptive analysis to gain an appreciation for the patients we hope to serve. And you'd be amazed at how much impact a simple dashboarding exercise can have and what it can reveal about why some patients might have a better or worse outcome. And then we're using this to then produce early solutions that provide near-term immediate return on investment. And then we're going to mature and evolve that approach to more sophisticated approaches like machine learning to continue adding additional layers of value for the organizations. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. We didn't wake up one day and become experts. We learned through successes and failures, but we've made a sustained commitment to building and evolving our core platform over time, which now allows us to deliver solutions faster that advance R&D goals. It's these consistent, sustained investments over time and cultivating and maturing teams that, to me, is the key to seeding AI capabilities within an organization.
Yeah, strikes me just a couple of primary themes that you're mentioning there. So, maybe a couple decades of maturity and cloud compute storage capabilities, really complex data sets. Decode does a lot of work with cell-free RNA data that's circulating, within the human body. But the ability to go from generalized treatment and diagnostic services to one of precision or personalized medicine is here with us today. It's complicated, that journey is, but as you were thinking about, well, what data is it that we need, and how do we choose the right AI strategy to deliver upon the promise of delivering true personalized and precision medicine within the company's capabilities. So Chase, thanks for that. Back to Eric Hendrickson. So Eric, your role as CTO of Provisions is interesting, and you must have many, many companies and prospects that are approaching you and thinking about, how do I get started in this journey and picking, the proper, the appropriate AI outcomes as Chase just described. How do you help those clients today?
Yeah, one of the reasons why I was really excited for Chase to be on this panel is I had watched and I'd been able to talk to Chase as a part of our relationship and see that as a leader, he understands that what he said, AI or really any technological innovation is not a one-shot kind of exercise. It requires both business orientation, but also an immediately incremental context. How can we do something, learn something, do something better? How can we learn something, do something better? So there is, I think, intrinsic to this whole goal setting process, the understanding that you don't know everything you need to know. And this is sort of what I try to help a kind of a business leader might come to me, or even a technology leader that's a little bit lost, to try to orient to this domain. Yes, set business goals, but also don't set such lofty, such idealistic, such single shot business goals that you aren't accounting for the fact that you don't know everything you need to know to sort of get from here to there. And so even if you set a lofty goal, make sure you've got enough time. It's sort of a smart orientation to the goal. Make sure it's time bound and you understand that it's not going to take a month to do something it might take 3 years to do. But then secondly, build in incremental iterative processing to your AI journey, and even how you frame and set goals. And so certainly I've watched Chase do that as a leader, but also many of our customers are at some point, some pivot point between the I'd like to inspire and set goals, and yet I don't really know how to do that in an incremental fashion, or maybe that they even need to. And so this is where I've tried to help bridge that gap and help in some cases educate, in some cases collaborate, and in some cases plan within an incremental strategy to get to the idealized.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And both of you sort of touched on the maturity levels that are necessary to continue to experiment and advance and take on perhaps more complicated projects. So now let's flip over to our second step, which is around data and thinking about location and risk and privacy and access and what I might call internal data data assets that the company has, external data assets, as Chase mentioned, a couple of those social determinants of health, genomic data, et cetera, in his world, and how companies need to think about this. So I'm going to start with Andrew on this one. So, well, first of all, Andrew, just a quick question for you. You're a black belt in AI at Microsoft. That sounds intriguing to me. Give us a few seconds on what that actually means and what you do in your day to day, and then I'm going to ask you to share your thoughts on techniques and considerations for selecting data, and at the same time ensuring appropriate privacy and reducing security risks.
Sure. Thanks, Eric. So the global black belt teams at Microsoft sit in between our engineering teams and our field teams, and we help mainstream the latest and greatest tech. So I serve on the Azure AI global black belt team, and so we focus very specifically on the Azure AI workloads like Azure Machine Learning, Azure AI Services and Search, and everybody's new favorite, Azure OpenAI. And we work with companies in all different industries and all around the world to really help them adopt the latest and greatest AI technology. And what's really interesting is with these new generative AI models, they have a unique ability to reason over unstructured data in a way that we really haven't been able to in the past. And a lot of companies have a lot of unstructured data. Think about any documentation or procedures or policies or HR documents or help documents. All of those are reasonably unstructured, even if you have good organization and files and folders and search and that stuff. The actual content of it is very unstructured, and so you're able to pull in relevant portions of this unstructured data, provide it to the model at the right time to be able to serve insights or generate answers in a way that has not been possible in the past.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And that unstructured data also includes multimodal data. So maybe it's audio or video files or different sources, streaming data, and certainly within healthcare, as all of us know, since about 2009, the High Tech Act, federal government and initiatives to really implement electronic health records, but many of those records are structured from a data standpoint, but include just significant amounts of unstructured data in the form of results or images and other materials that are now great data sources to allow us to really think about these areas. So Chase, back to you and thinking about the partnerships that you have with diagnostic companies, life sciences. How do you think about the let's call it the best data, the appropriate data to drive those insights for analysis and where early and accurate diagnosis is an imperative? And you might touch upon a little bit of your work in MS and uh, autoimmune conditions as well.
Yeah, thank you. For us, data quality is everything. It's garbage in, garbage out. And we spend some of the most time on data understanding and preparation in our collaborations. And you can have the slickest data engine and collection of tools in the world, but if you don't have quality information flowing into it, the solutions you develop just won't be commercially successful. And a lot of the groups, particularly academic groups, they spend time building data lakes that aggregate information from a wide range of sources. And they then build models that require very specific inputs that may not be easy to come by in the real world. And these can be great in academic or research studies, but for those of us who are looking to deploy models for commercial use, the data used to train and test the model needs to be as close to the data inputs you would expect to receive on a consistent basis once you operationalize it. Understanding the business use case and understanding the path to commercialization, answering what does success look like as early in the process as possible is critical. And you know, based on your question, we've enjoyed a partnership with one of the leading diagnostic companies in the world, and we discovered very early on that we had to go back to basics to solve for sample handling and sample integrity issues before we could build the data assets to advance whole new testing solutions. We had to solve infrastructure challenges first to ensure the quality of our data inputs. We also addressed and developed entirely new quality control standards for how the data assets were generated. And, another war story is this, consistent issue of groups shooting for a one size fits all approach. We see a lot of groups building approaches with one group of patients and then expecting those approaches to be just as accurate for groups where the provider makeup, the payer composition, the patient demographics are very different. And then they act surprised when the approach falls short and it suffers from poor accuracy. And I think this is back to where the maturity of the team and the sophistication of the approach, the recognition that subtlety and nuance exist within the data, these are critical factors for success. So you have to be mindful of it to avoid the data odyssey and then instead focus on delivering the solutions that provide value.
Yeah, no, that's great, and appreciate that. We might take a transition to our step three and the four-step process, and this is really revolves around, how do you think about, or how should companies think about the appropriate AI solution for their business initiatives for solving these complex problems. Early on, those could be interpretive uses of advanced analytics, maybe predictive, thinking about specificity and sensitivity and statistical models with large data sets that are entirely now possible. And as Eric and Andrew mentioned, in the last 18 months, we've just seen an explosion in generative AI, particularly with what OpenAI and now many others have been able to do. So I'm going to start with Eric on this one, and there's many different categories. So I'm thinking of building an AI strategy for the company. I've thought a lot about and worked with the business on what are those business goals and problems that we're attempting to solve. And now with cloud compute capabilities and advancing AI capabilities, I need to sort of go down a path of selecting the appropriate AI category. How do you think about that, and what are you hearing from your clients and prospects about how you can help them in that regard?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. One of the things that's fascinating to me is how interest, excitement, and then volumes of information to folks just trying to make sense of it. You can get kind of things linked in a way, hard linked in a way that are not exactly linked. Like maybe there's an underlying building block, like a large language model that is powering a use case like generative, but what you often kind of maybe don't see is that sometimes, for example, classification tasks or name entity recognition tasks, which would have previously been done by classic machine learning and still can be and maybe should be in some cases, also can be enabled by large language models. And so the idea that generative and large language models are certainly linked but not the same thing is an important topic right now, because one of the things that I think is hard for people to wrap their head around is isn't AI generative and isn't generative large language model? And so first of all, no and no, right? And so part of what's I think important and why this step is a bit of a break tap step is what do you like back to the outcomes. There's a set of business outcomes you're trying to accomplish, which goes to step one. And then there's a set of, I'll call them technology outcomes or product or solution outcomes that you want to create. So generative, for example, is really about generating content, new content, essentially new content based on existing other content. So if that is indeed your use case and that indeed aligns to your business outcome, great, that's what you need. But it's possible what you're thinking of as AI is in fact AI, but it's not generative at all. It's actually prediction, or it's classification, or it's a number of other sort of technology or AI use cases which are not inherently generative. They probably more fall into large scale classification tasks, or large, again, frequently it's helpful to have. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about Chase's explanation during the question one, or step one, was the scale of data, right? And so one of the things, of course, that AI for since its inception has allowed us to do things with volumes of data at granularities which are mind-boggling, which humans would never have been able to approach. But as I said, that's as relevant to prediction or insights generation as it is to generative. And so
Yeah.
back to this idea about anchoring to what are you actually trying to do, both from a business perspective, but what AI pattern solution, category of AI solution is the one you need, because of course generative is all the hotness, right? But it's not the only way to solve a scale AI solution, nor is it even the only one. So this one is a little
Yeah.
bit of a stop. Do we actually want generative or not? And if we don't or do, how do we approach that?
Yeah, it just strikes me that the possibilities to solve problems are complex problems are have a lot of variation, and there are so many possibilities, both leveraging internal and external data, that sort of thinking about the right category of AI and then building that maturity, doing a little eating of your vegetables early on, and thinking about structuring of data and making sure that you're in a good place to begin. I'm going to remind all the listeners today that we do have some time at the end here for our Q&A sessions. So be sure to drop those in the question icon that you see on your screens. Thanks for doing that. That'll help us here. Chase, I'm going to pivot over to you. Intrigued by a recent New York Times bestseller. It's a book called Outlive by Peter Attia, a physician that really is thinking about moving from medicine 2.0 to 3.0, and big picture there is we have a tendency to know best ways to treat conditions today, but we have an opportunity to really be early in complex conditions, cardiovascular conditions, neurodegenerative conditions, leveraging data, and then to really work in a personalized or precision mindset to prescribe and work with patients on the best appropriate path that improves their health outcomes. All of this involves complex data, DNA and RNA sequencing data, clinical annotations, maybe touch on that and what that means in your world. And then we all understand that the primary drivers of health generally are factors that live outside of where one gets their medical attention. So how has Decode thought about these data sets, very complex data sets, structured in and advancing your company's strategy?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And, I would say before you do anything, before you start thinking about these sophisticated data sets, you need to get the business and data stakeholders together, and you need to be united around a business problem that needs to be solved, and then what success looks like, for the organization. And without that, you're going to risk doing a lot of work and having the solution collect dust on the shelf. But once you have this alignment and the solutions start to mature, I believe the most successful systems of the future, they're actually going to integrate multiple approaches to first, descriptively understand the problem, then to predict the outcome of what we're hoping to solve for, and from this learn, which factors influence the prediction. Our team, we commonly refer to this as persona building, and then finally use these generative AI approaches to promote explainability of the outputs that build a bridge to action. In time, more sophisticated systems are actually going to see the convergence of generative AI and classical AI, where model inputs are actually being fed by generative approaches to refine and augment the solutions over time. And in our clinical world and beyond, really, explainability is everything. If you can't explain how you arrived at a solution and demystify the black box, build a persona for the patient, you're going to really struggle with adoption. So When we deliver a biomarker solution to a pharma or diagnostic company, we can't simply say we found a magic bag of genes and trust us, we've got it. Instead, we had to build systems to rapidly interrogate the results and link them with the disease context to the extent that we can, and draw connections based on the literature that help us build confidence in results. Um, I think it's also important to frame the value of the solution you've built when you're trying to solve for a particular problem within a business, or you're looking to solve a clinical problem. You need to understand the costs and benefits associated with being right, framing the expected value you're going to derive from the modeling approach, even if it's a simple data approach. It's critically important. Do the benefits outweigh the costs? And we're not just talking here about the data work. We're talking about the operational implementation of the model. On the
Yeah.
cost side, it could be, does the model trigger a care manager to intervene or schedule a patient? And on the benefit side, is it, what are the cost savings associated with one readmission that's prevented, or one case of sepsis that's averted with proactive clinical care? Just thinking about the costs and benefits, they're going to help reinforce whether you have a solution that's ready for prime time.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And as all of you know, and in the world of healthcare, there's a transformation perhaps that's occurring, and perhaps it could move at a little bit quicker pace that would really unlock a lot of value for patients and provider organizations. We call it value-based care, and essentially is how do we think about better clinical outcomes and rewarding those organizations that are responsible and working with patients for superior health outcomes, and at the same time thinking about a very different and improved patient experience, where the system is built around that patient or consumer. So you have a lot of stakeholders that have a value equation. And Chase, as you're mentioning that, it strikes me that consideration of all of those stakeholders, whether it's your company or your clients or your business partners or channel relationships or your shareholders or those organizations that are frontline supporting you, how do you create and think about leveraging AI for those value relationships? So thanks for doing that. We will drop off into our fourth step now, and this was an intriguing one, and it's ways in which to think about AI as a feature, maybe of an application or software that you've licensed, or thinking about AI as a platform, or really AI as science. And I'm going to start with Eric again on this one at Provisions Group. Um, Eric, tell us how you're thinking about that, and how every business can really annotate AI as one of those three elements: a feature, a platform, and a science.
Yeah, one of the things that led to creating this framework was the realization, which, by the way, is not unique to AI. This happens frequently in exciting, innovative areas of technology or data. If this was your first starting point, meaning you sort of thought about AI, you're excited about AI, maybe you're fearful that as a company, you're going to be left behind in AI, and then you immediately make a beeline to, I need Copilot. I need I need I need ambient features in my EMR. I need, it's like you immediately jump to step forward. Then what I would leave you with, hopefully today, or what we'd leave you with, hopefully today, is some real world grounded examples of why you might have skipped some steps. You may have sort of left behind, like, wait, what problem am I trying to solve with AI, and what data do I have to take to that AI solution? And yeah, what actual, when it comes to AI solution, what do I actually want? Because of course, lots of people are interested in generative, but do I actually even want a generative solution, right? But like, now we get to this stage and we kind of go, okay, now if we've done 1, 2, and 3, now we can start to think about how can we index in to that particular business outcome, the data set, and the type of AI solution you want, and how are we going to deploy that? Because it is very often, I mean, this is the excitement in generative and really even in predictive. Historically, the only real way to do AI was AI as science. I mean, back, we'll say 10 years or more ago, to do AI, to be interested in AI, to be interested in machine learning or NLP or computer vision was to ask the immediate question: can I afford a data scientist? How many do I need? I got to build an ML team, don't I? Yeah. How do I go build engineers? But how do I source them? Right. But that was the only insertion point at that time. But of course, lots of the excitement, which has been building. I mean, part of what Andrew knows full well, right? Because we've been able to watch this is, first the platforms were built, and now more than just data scientists could avail themselves of AI, predictive and otherwise models, and of course now it's generative models, or large language models. But now what's of course happened and what's led to, I think, mass, I won't use the word hysteria, but I've used the word hysteria, right? It's AI's feature, right? It's this mass democratization of the thing that we, now want to use, but ultimately, depending on several factors, which we've in many ways highlighted already today, you may need simply to turn on that AI feature in your EMR. That's it, and that's your AI strategy. And that's sufficient based on your business outcomes and based on the data you have and based on who you are as a company. You may simply need to turn on Copilot and be prescriptive about how people should automate their business outcomes with respect to your particular AI vision. But you also may need to engage in the Azure AI services that Andrew described, or again, as Eric said quite well, exists in other clouds, right? I mean, there's lots and lots of platform solutions that allow developers and analysts, some even in low-code citizen developer-ish formats, right? So you don't necessarily always need to write a bunch of code to even make these available to you at the platform level. And then lastly, again, yes, there are cases when you still need to fine tune, transfer, learn, whatever the large language model, or you need to just build a predictive classification system based on traditional ML, because that's the solution you need. And so this is where those three, AI's feature, AI platform, and AI's science, is a helpful way to say, okay, great, you've done the first three steps. What is the right insertion point based on the first three steps analysis? And also, what can you afford? Is there a progressive pattern? Back to the whole iterative and incremental premise we established when we talked about this early with Chase. Yeah, I mean, is there a way to kind of get you baby stepped in so that you can learn some things and so that you can be more thoughtful about where your insertion point is, or how to build teams, or what do I need and what kinds of teams do I need? So anyway, that's a lot of how we're thinking about it is organizing the market in those strata.
Yeah, that's great. I think about the times that we're living in these days is perhaps, and I work with a lot of early stage founders and entrepreneurs, but perhaps the best time ever to thinking about building a business that's got a technology or a tech solution delivery from it. The tools that are available, the services that are available, the cloud compute storage capabilities of the big providers enable many companies to at the early stage to solve complex problems. And Andrew, you touched a little bit upon this earlier when you talked about some of the releases that Microsoft had actually made this week. So thinking about those tools, Microsoft categories as service platform and feature as Eric just laid out. What can you tell us about what Microsoft is doing these days?
Yeah, if you think about your AI solutions that Eric was kind of describing, in the traditional categories of cloud computing, right? Software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service, you'll see that a lot of the AI solutions today fall into those same three categories. So software as a solution, you see things like the Microsoft 365 Copilot, you see the Bing Copilot, these things that are AI as a feature, things you can just enable thoughtfully and with the proper controls, but make these AI features available in your organization today. Excuse me. And then if you look at the platform as a service, you have things like Azure AI services that are a lot of pre-built models available through APIs. Azure OpenAI sits in this space. Azure AI Search. And so you can then use this platform to build custom solutions without a deep understanding of deep learning or machine learning or how the models are actually built. but yet you can build on top of these platforms to build things for your organization. And then at the infrastructure as a service level, you have things like Azure Machine Learning, which is a platform that you can use to build custom models, to do that true data science for things that are very unique or very customized to your organization. Or maybe you want to develop a new type of model that doesn't exist yet today. Or perhaps it's fine tuning on some large language models or some small language models. Eric, that you mentioned, Microsoft just released this week. We announced the new Phi 3 small language models that are specifically designed to be fine tuned to meet your use case.
Yeah, fascinating to me. And we're going to touch on that. Thanks to those of you that have submitted some questions. We're going to touch on a couple of these concepts. So, Andrew, I'm going to go back to you with this one. This is one from our audience today. So, thank you for this. How do you manage the security issues around LLMs and AI? And so many people and companies think that implementing AI is putting their data on ChatGPT for all to see. And then while you're touching upon this, Eric, tell us, just give us an overview of LLMs, proprietary, open source, etc.
Yeah,
I heard
so
Andrew and Eric, so you go first, Andrew.
yeah, I'll go first about kind of the security standpoint. So one common thing or common practice that we see with AI is this pattern called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, or sometimes you'll hear it called RAG. And the oftentimes it can also be called, chat on your data. And really what you're doing here is the user is asking a question or having a chat, and then your application is going and retrieving data that's relevant from a knowledge store and presenting that to the large language model, and saying, using this information, answer the question. And what's key here is you want to make sure that the data that is retrieved, the user who's asking the question actually has access to. And so there's very important things that you need to do here, like maintaining data security and role-based access control from the underlying data sources to that knowledge store that you're actually querying at the time of the question. So we have some great best practices to follow using things like Azure AI Search here, doing security trimming, and persisting those role-based access controls into the search index.
Yeah, so maybe to simplify that, if I was a user at an organization and didn't have rights to a certain data set, then that's where really that first control is in me using that data to apply against, say, a large language model. Um, Eric, did you want to touch on that? And I've got a second question that is similar, but a little bit healthcare specific. You want to touch
Yeah,
on it?
I'll say something real fast, and then we'll bounce back to the healthcare question. And then if you'd like me to comment on that, I'll be glad to. So to increment onto Andrew's comment, one of the things that's interesting about, for example, specifically Microsoft Copilot it's a packaged retrieval augmented generation solution. And so one of the things to keep in your brain clear, at least on Copilot, but again, the pattern holds, right? Whether you're designing your own RAG solution or you're pulling one off the shelf that's packaged, that retrieval system has to be security aware. It has to know that the thing that it's retrieving, you should actually get before it passes it on to the large language model. In the case of M365 Copilot, that's the Graph API. And Graph API is the underlying API. You could almost think about that as the API for everything in Microsoft 365. And because it is the underlying API, it is security and context aware with regards to what you get access to in 365. So one of the common isms or common comments that we explain, but also Microsoft themselves commonly explains, is that while you may have unfortunately been relying on what I'll call security by obscurity, meaning people may have access to things in Microsoft 365 that you didn't know they had access to, Copilot, for example, and other similar RAG solutions will not give you anything that you didn't have access to. So you may need to do an audit. You may need to look at what people have access to, but ultimately, Graph as the retrieval system in the RAG in the context of Copilot won't give you anything more than you already had access to. It will give you everything that you have access to. And so, as an administrator, as a security executive or engineer, if you're thinking about securing Copilot, for example, or other similar solutions, make sure your retrieval system is security and context aware. Graph is, but it's going to give you everything you have access to. So you'll want to make sure that M365 is sort of battened down in terms of that. So
Yeah, it strikes me to attempt to prevent those potential errors before they occur with good security policies and practices. Somewhat related question. It's actually a really good question. What's the best approach to leveraging an LLM or Gen AI tool in a healthcare organization while keeping PHI protected and HIPAA compliant? And for those of you not in the industry, HIPAA is Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1992. It is for several decades now governed privacy and security within the industry. And Chase, maybe I'll start with you on this one. We live in this world of so much promise of personalized medicine and really leveraging these large data sets. And at the same time, we're reminded every day by cybersecurity issues and breaches that the protection of that personal health information is of utmost importance for every organization out there. So, how do we do that? Maybe you can comment on how Decode is thinking about that to in the work that you're doing.
No, it's a really important question, and it's one that we've spent a lot of time thinking about. And we try to work with tokenized or de-identified data to the extent we can. And there are some great ecosystem partnerships we've forged with groups like DataVant that allow us to exchange information without shouldering the burden of all of the PHI. So we can do our work with a limited data set where we can still have the unique code for that individual, but not have to have all of their information. So if you don't have to have it, I would encourage you not to have it to the extent possible, or work with groups like a DataVant to exchange that information. But it's something that keeps a lot of us up at night.
Yeah, so many coalitions forming within the healthcare industry, and this notion of federated and data maybe never leaving premise, but having the keys to lock and unlock protected health information, and then really leverage that data with some of the capabilities that we talked about earlier. Eric or Andrew, you want to touch upon that from healthcare HIPAA PHI perspective?
I'd love to. The so if you think about generative AI in terms of excuse me, Chat GPT, that is not that's not what you want to be doing with your healthcare data, right? Chat GPT is a consumer grade application that persists a whole lot of information about your chats. But if you use those underlying models through something like Azure OpenAI, you're able to build an enterprise grade solution that will have security and private endpoints and virtual networks and customer managed keys and be able to prevent data loss because the data is never persisted in the actual AI models. And so,
Yeah.
you know, there's a big difference between the consumer grade tools that everybody has access to and enterprise grade solutions that you can build with a platform like Azure AI.
So maybe the best of both worlds, the ability to leverage some of these LLMs that are in some areas, as you know, industry specific, while at the same time protecting the data within the company. And those tools and resources are available now. Eric Henderson, I'll ask you, do you want to touch upon that? If not, I've got another question here.
yeah, we can go to the next one. I think these guys did a phenomenal job talking about the presence of mind to consider both either not having your environment in the first place, which I think Chase touched on is a great starting point. There's this just because I can doesn't mean I should. sort of mindset, I think, attached to that. And so then, of course, yeah, Andrew handled the choosing of the platform, potentially even the SaaS product, right? Because of course, just because it's AI as feature doesn't necessarily, or AI as product doesn't necessarily mean it's insecure. You just need to kind of walk your vendors through the same rigor that you would any vendor, right? We wouldn't choose an EMR vendor without considering is that EMR vendor HIPAA compliant? If they're hosting it for you, do they have the ability to attest to that compliance somehow through third-party audits? I mean, these are all things. Will they sign a BAA? Right? These are all things that we would classically consider. I would argue AI as features are different than that. So stop, run them through your typical evaluation process in that way. But yeah, to Andrew's point, if you want to be darn sure, you can sort of step to that AI as platform level, and there's so many cloud options available relative to the compute storage capabilities in the modern cloud that allow you to get access to that security, privacy, so that it's never entering and traversing the public internet, which is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, it's a great point, and actually a great segue to the next question, and one that I've been thinking about. So over my career, always been with organizations that had really good governance, IT governance, and compliance relationships, and that generally and always involved a broad perspective of the organization. I'm curious to how each of you are thinking about AI governance, and what we've seen and is just a rapid rate of innovation, and the possibilities that we've explored today is a great example here. Are there best practices or frameworks around AI governance, and what advice might you give to companies that are thinking about leveraging these exciting technologies, but perhaps lack the corporate structure and the governance that's necessary? Andrew, I'll start with you and then go to Chase and Eric.
Yeah, thank you. So I think it starts with like good IT maturity to begin with, right? Those principles are going to carry into the AI world. Next, start at first principles. What are the outcomes that you're trying to achieve? And with those two in mind, uh, then keep an agile mindset where you're going to iterate quickly, fail fast, succeed fast, and build iteratively. Because as we've all seen in the last 18 months, this AI world is moving faster than tech has in the past several decades, which is insane, right? Tech has always moved very fast, but I'm observing AI moving even faster than what we've seen. So be flexible, be agile, continue to develop, continue to learn, continue to grow the AI maturity as the industry develops.
Yeah, fantastic. Chase, a few seconds on governance.
Yeah, I think why it matters is, it's all about building trust with stakeholders,
Yeah,
and it's also making sure you're addressing bias and privacy and potential misuse. But I think good governance will actually help a successful organization be better at development. And it's not something that has to forever be set in stone. It can benefit from feedback and iteration. Once you put it into practice, once you train people, benefit from feedback and iteration.
yeah, so important. And I love the way you started with trust and transparency to stakeholders, and starting with that, and then iterating over a governance model. Eric Hendrickson, a few last seconds here.
Yeah, I think what I would say is governance goes into sort of either the on-the-shelf three-ring binder version of how we picture governance. It's a set of principles, guiding ideals, policies, which we're glad to have, but ultimately are not practical in the sense that we don't look at them every day. They're not super exciting. They're kind of stodgy. There's that lens, which, by the way, is an important, thoughtful, top-down view on governance. I think the other thing that is important, I mean, it goes into Chase's comments. It certainly goes to Andrew's comments. It goes to what I've recently been working with a few early-stage companies at the senior level to develop fluency. So we talked a lot about this during the age of data transformation or digital transformation, and how digitally fluent is your organization? Can we even have a conversation at the leadership table about the concerns, the issues, without either sort of shifting into fear, right? Because like that's not productive, particularly productive. I mean, it's certainly risk modeling is productive, but kind of running from rather than running to solutions is certainly not productive as a leadership team or as an organization. And so, and then secondly, it's difficult to plan together if you are not speaking the same language. And so one of the things that I would encourage earlier than even what I'll call classic governance can even start is develop just a little bit of a what does AI mean to us? What data, again, back to the outcomes, not necessarily just a planning exercise. What are our goals? What are our smart objectives? Yes, but
Yeah.
also how are we going to talk about those? How are we going to measure those? What's
Yeah.
the vocabulary we're going to leverage? Because we can't ultimately plan together and measure the success or outcome of, as Andrew said, early failures or early successes, unless we kind of use the same language at the leadership table. And so demystifying that and grounding for now what we mean when we say, that's an important, in my mind, pre-step or even first step to data governance, because it becomes hard to
No,
otherwise.
those are fantastic points. I want to send 3 thank yous out here today. So first of all, thank you, Andrew Chase and Eric Hendrickson. Great perspective today. I'd like to thank Provisions Group, IT staffing and consulting services for hosting this panel today. And I want to thank all of you that are still with us and all of you that attended, whether live or capturing this session. Your time is the most valuable asset that you have. We're thrilled that you spent an hour with us. Thanks to you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.